This is everything you need to know to go to Japan. By the way, if we haven't met, my name's Chris, and I love traveling to Japan. In the past 20 years, I've taken over 15 trips to this country, and in this video, I've compiled everything I wish I knew when I first started traveling here. I'm gonna share with you how to get into Japan, how to get around Japan without getting lost, where you should stay, what you should eat, some of the best things you should do, and how to plan your itinerary here. All right, fellow explorers, let's go. And a special thanks to Sim Local for sponsoring this guide. And the first thing to know is just a little bit of information to help you get oriented to Japan. Oh, by the way, I'm gonna be shooting each one of these scenes in a different part of Tokyo, telling you where I am as I'm shooting it so that you can maybe visit these things you see in the background, that staircase and this shrine. This is the Hiei Shrine, one of Tokyo's most photogenic areas and shrines and staircases. All right, but let's get you oriented to Japan. Japan is located in East Asia. Its closest neighbors are Russia, China, and Korea. Japan is an archipelago consisting of 4 main islands: Honshu, Hokkaido, Shikoku, and Kyushu, as well as thousands of smaller islands. Probably the most well-known are the islands of Okinawa, which are about 400 miles from mainland Japan, or a 2-hour flight. Honshu, the largest island where Tokyo is home to major cities like this one, Osaka, and Kyoto. This is the part of Japan that most tourists visit. About 100 million people live on Honshu. That's about 80% of Japan's population, making it the most dense. Hokkaido, the northernmost island, is known for its colder climate, beautiful landscapes, with Sapporo as its major city. Yes, that's the same name as the beer, and you can go to their main brewery when you go there, along with visiting the snow. 5 million people live in Sapporo. Shikoku, a smaller island located between Honshu and Kyushu, it's famous for its noodles, coastline, and religious pilgrimage sites. About 4 million people live in Shikoku. Kyushu is the southernmost island with a warmer climate and volcanic activity, known for its hot springs, beaches, and volcanoes. About 12 million people live in Kyushu. And yes, you'll find more detailed Yellow Productions videos on all of these areas that I've been to over the past 15 years. I've put a link in the description to my whole Japan travel list with over 150 videos just on Japan alone. Now, another big defining feature of Japan is that the country is very mountainous, with the Japanese Alps being a prominent mountain range. Mount Fuji, the highest peak in Japan, is a symbol of the country. Travel is generally easy and quick up and down the coastlines, and slow if you're going across through the mountain ranges. The second thing to know is about some of the popular destinations in Japan, and we're gonna start with Tokyo, the capital city, the biggest metropolis in the country. It's known for its modern skyscrapers, high-end shopping, high-tech electronics, with huge digital screens and robots abound, and entertainment districts that go long into the night. Tokyo is where you go to see modern Japan. Oh, and by the way, where I'm standing in Tokyo, this is the Imperial Palace right behind me. Generally not open to the public most times, occasionally though, so if you happen to be here when it is open, do go check it out. This is not the main government building anymore. The main government building is just over that way. The National Diet Building, no, that's not the Weight Loss Center, that's their main government building. All right, the second most popular city for people to visit in Japan is Kyoto, a historic city with countless temples, shrines, and traditional geisha districts. Right next to that is Osaka, the second biggest metropolis. It's a lively city famous for its street food, shopping, and entertainment. Hiroshima is a city that commemorates the atomic bombing with the Peace Memorial Park and Museum. Of course, there's Mount Fuji, the iconic symbol of Japan. It's a volcano and offers truly stunning views and hiking trails. Good news is the volcano currently dormant. Also really popular to visit the Fuji 5 Lakes region around Mount Fuji. Nikko is one of the most popular day trips from Tokyo. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site with beautiful temples, shrines, and waterfalls. Up in the north in Hokkaido is Sapporo, the capital of Hokkaido, offering winter sports, festivals, and delicious seafood. Their most famous festival is their Winter Festival, where they build these amazing ice sculptures. Hakone, near Mount Fuji, is a resort town known for their hot springs and beautiful views of Mount Fuji, although they call Mount Fuji a very shy mountain, so you'll be very lucky if you can see it when it's not shrouded in clouds. And one of my favorite lesser-known cities is Kanazawa. People often call it Little Kyoto. It's a historic city with a well-preserved samurai district and beautiful gardens. If you want to see charming old Japan without the tourist hordes of Kyoto, check out Kanazawa. And finally, there's Okinawa. It's a subtropical island chain known for its beaches, marine life, and unique culture. Okinawa, much like Hawaii in the USA, is very different from the rest of Japan, so Okinawa is a subject for its own video. Now, the most popular route that visitors take when they go to Japan is called the Golden Route. It generally starts in Tokyo and it works its way to the Kansai region. That's where Osaka, Kyoto are. I'd say allocate 2 weeks if you want to do a trip where you visit Tokyo, Kyoto, and Osaka and the surrounding regions. If you just have a week, just pick one region. Just pick Tokyo. Just pick the Kansai region. Osaka, Kyoto. Don't try to do it all. Japan looks small on a map, but there turns out there's a lot to see here. I find most tourists really try to cramp too much into too small of a trip, and they end up spending all of their time on the bullet trains, only seeing Japan out of the train window. Now, whoa, before you go in the comments to say, Chris, you're pronouncing the names of these major cities wrong, you're probably right. My American English gets the better of me. There is no city known as Tokyo. It's Tokyo, kind of like 2 syllables. Same with Kyoto, 2 syllables. And Osaka has a very long O. So if you want to pronounce it the Japanese way, it's Tokyo, Kyoto, and Osaka. But my American English is probably going to sneak in throughout this video. Sorry. Oh, and by the way, if the grass looks tempting in front of the National Palace to like have a picnic on or play soccer on, no getting on that grass. But apparently what you can do, if you're a police officer, you can ride a horse around the Imperial Palace. That looks like fun. The third thing to know is about getting into Japan, and chances are, if you're like most people that come to Japan, you're going to be flying. The big major airports are in Tokyo and Osaka. Tokyo has 2 major airports. Tokyo Narita is like the main international airport for Japan. Tokyo Haneda is the closer into the city airport, which they shoved all the long-haul international flights to Narita, but they've slowly been putting more international flights back to Haneda. If I'm coming to Tokyo, my choice is generally Haneda because it's closer to the city, just a lot quicker to get in. Unless I'm going to Tokyo Disneyland. If I was going to Tokyo Disneyland, then Tokyo Narita is the choice, though flights to Tokyo Narita will often be cheaper than flights to Haneda, just due to convenience. Now, the other big airport is in Osaka. It's Osaka Kansai Airport. This is the one that's on the artificial floating island. If you can get a flight into Osaka, that's a great way to do the Kansai Kyoto region. You'll often find a lot more of the Asian discount carriers fly into there, and there's also some smaller regional airports in Sapporo, Nagoya, and Fukuoka that you can pick up flights from neighboring countries. Now, there are other ways to get to Japan other than flying or swimming. There's a vibrant cruise industry. The major cruise ports in Japan are in Kobe and Yokohama, and you can also take ferries in primarily from South Korea. Those will go to cities like Fukuoka and Osaka. Oh, by the way, where am I standing now? This is the National Garden that's in front of the Imperial Palace. By the way, when I said you can't go into the Imperial Palace proper, because actually the royal family still lives there, but there's tons of gardens and things like that that you can go on that are totally worthwhile to check out on the Imperial Palace grounds. And the high-rises back here, these are the main high-rises in the Tokyo-to Business District, right in front of Tokyo Station, that we're going to head to next. The fourth thing to know is about getting around Japan, and I am walking to Tokyo Station. So let's talk about walking first, because walking is definitely a primary method of getting around Japanese cities, particularly the big ones. They've definitely prioritized the pedestrian infrastructure in the big cities. From ramps to tunnels to bridges to crosswalks, you will feel safe as a pedestrian here. Now, how do you know where you're going? How do you get directions? My favorite way is using Google Maps. I've got it up right now to get to Tokyo Station, but I often like to look at Google Maps, not like in start as if I'm driving, but as in just like the overview route, because it helps to kind of like see where you've come from, where you're going, and you can get like a little arrow that helps you find your navigation. Now, the other thing you should know, like sometimes to cross the street, it might be better to go like down in a tunnel. So there's a staircase right over there, and there's also a staircase right over there. So you might end up at a crosswalk and find that you like, what? How do I cross this intersection? Go ahead and look down below to see if there's a way to get across below. Now, the general rule of thumb in the big cities is if your walk is longer than 20 minutes, then you might want to look at some transit options. Sure, you can walk everywhere, but your feet are going to get tired and you'll have some blisters. And the public transit here is really amazing. And you might be thinking, well, Chris, 20 minutes? You know, I mean, if I've got to wait like 15 minutes for the train or something like that, like, is it really worth it? This is where you really have to change your frame of mind here, because, you know, if you're between 2 lines on the Yamanote line that we'll talk to in a moment, those trains at rush hour come like every 90 seconds. So you don't wait a long time for transit. All right, I've made it to Tokyo Station now, and so I want to talk about the primary way that most visitors get around after walking, and that is by taking some form of rail transportation, whether it would be train, subway, or bullet train. They're all really great in Japan, and the center of the bullet train network is right here at Tokyo Station. The bullet trains all converge on Tokyo Station, and so this is a great place to be if you're like visiting a lot of the country from one spot. There's actually a hotel in it right here, this old structure right here, there's a hotel. That's the Tokyo Station Hotel. We'll talk more about hotels when we get to it, but I do really like this hotel. If you can afford it, it's a really great experience. Now you may be wondering, Chris, what about renting a car? And if it's your first time in Japan, you should just try to do without a car. Most visitors in Japan don't rent cars. It's not hard to drive in Japan. Just your first time, you might be overwhelmed with a lot of things. I have driven a lot of times in Japan. I find driving in Japan to be enjoyable. The drivers are polite, they're courteous, but you want to save that for going out to the countryside and away from the cities. You don't want to drive in the cities. The roads are narrow, there's no parking. Definitely use public transit to get around the cities. What you should also know in Japan is that most streets actually don't have names. I know I'm staying next to a sign of a street that has a name, which reminded me that I wanted to say this. This street has a name. The major streets tend to have names, but the minor streets, the alleys where most of the businesses, restaurants, and things like that are, those usually don't have names. So how do you know where to go? How do you find things? How are they numbered? They're generally numbered by like, what was the first building built in the neighborhood, second building, third building. That's how they're numbered. Most navigation is really based on maps and landmarks, and so those maps are going to be priceless. Now, the major ways to get around by metropolitan train or subway, and there's a lot of people that are worried about that and they just end up taking taxis because they're overwhelmed, particularly in big cities, because there's so many different lines and there's so many different options. Use Google Maps as your friend to help you find routes. It is a great way to help you out. It'll give you suggestions about trains and buses and all those things that you can use. Definitely don't underestimate though when you're going into the station that it takes a while to like walk down the steps and the escalators and the staircase to actually get to your train, so factor that time in. Google usually does a pretty good job of factoring in walking times to things, but I find it doesn't usually do as good of a job to factor in walking time once you actually get to the station to get to the platform. Now, when you're taking the trains within the city, don't buy single tickets. They sell single tickets. There's machines to do it. There's maps that'll tell you about all the fares. It's really confusing and it's really complicated. Your best bet is going to get an IC card. You may have heard of Suica. Suica is the IC card within Tokyo. Every metropolitan region has its own IC card with a different name. There are things that you can tap in and tap out to ride the trains. They are all compatible with each other, so you can buy one in Tokyo and use it in Osaka and vice versa, though they'll have a different name and a different design when you buy in those places. Even within Tokyo, if you buy the IC card from JR, the Japan Railways, the national train provider, it's a Suica and it'll have a penguin on it. If you buy the IC card from the subway, it's going to be called Passmo, but it's the exact same compatible thing. Now, if you're buying the physical cards, you can only buy and load them with cash. That's how you do it. You buy and load them with cash. There's some of the welcome Suicas you can order online and have them shipped to your house, but if you're buying them in Japan at the station, then you're going to be paying cash for them and cash to reload them. The one exception to that is if you have an iPhone, I'm holding up an Android, but if you have an iPhone, you can actually buy a Suica on your iPhone, and then you can use the Suica on your iPhone to tap in and tap out. That's how you get in and off the trains. You tap in at the gates, and when you're done with your ride, you tap out because it is a distance-based cost system, so make sure you have that thing to tap in and tap out. Oh, and if you find you don't have enough money on your IC card to like get out of the subway or train station, at the exits there's always going to be these like recharge your IC card machines right here, and so you can actually add more money right at the exit right here so you can actually get out. Now, definitely be aware of rush hour, like morning rush hour from maybe 7:30 to 9:30 and evening rush hour from 5 to 7 p.m. That's when the trains are the most crowded. You've probably heard of the pushers in Tokyo that push people onto the trains. COVID, I think they're a thing of the past, or maybe just a thing that hasn't come back again. The trains aren't quite that busy, but sometimes when it's busy, you may feel like a human sardine in the train, so just avoid those times. You should also pay attention to the last train time. Trains in Japan do not run 24 hours, and so particularly if you're going to some like destination like Nikko that's far away, take a picture of the board that has the train times and pay attention to the last one so that you don't miss it. Otherwise, you'll end up with a really expensive taxi ride to go back home. Also be aware that on the trains, there's very little luggage storage, particularly on the subway, places like that. There's like sometimes tiny little overhead racks or underthing racks, but if you've got big luggage, you might want to take your luggage in a taxi, because you'll also have the thing of like getting it down to the platform, down the stairs, down the escalator. I mean, they're supposed to have elevators at all of the stations. Like at Tokyo Station, there's an elevator, but there's very few of them, and sometimes there may be a long wait for the elevators that you'll need if you have lots of luggage. The other thing you can utilize are the luggage shipping services. Japan has a great network of companies that will ship your luggage from hotel to hotel for you. They will even store your luggage for a while. We've used this when we've come into Japan, we've like checked one suitcase at the airport and said, hey, deliver this us in a week when we're going to the snow towns, and then it magically shows up at the hotel that we asked for a week later with all of our snow gear, and we didn't have to carry around with us on the whole trip. Now, in addition to the transport, the train stations that you take the trains out of are amazing as well. Tokyo Station itself is a tourist attraction and a sight to behold. In most of the major train stations, you'll find tons of shops, you'll find tons of restaurants, you'll find restrooms in nearly every station as well, but they can be confusing, particularly the really big ones. And so you'll want to pay attention to your track number and also the exit that you're going to want to take, because stations like Shinjuku Station can have not just 1, 2, 3, but like 10, 20, even more exits. And so like at Shinjuku Station, which is Tokyo's busiest train station, there's a south exit, there's a new south exit, and there's a southern terrace exit, and those are all different exits and might be, once you get out of the station at the wrong one, a 10-minute walk to get where you wanted to go. So pay attention to the specific exit that you want to go out of. Oh, and if you don't know what exit to go out when you get to a station, you can find these exit boards that talk about what exit to take. So here you can say like, oh, I want to go to Shibuya Scramble Square, then it will tell you to go out exit C3. Where is exit C3? Well, the Shibuya Scramble exit. That way. Now, while you're in the stations, you'll find the local Japanese to be like hurrying and running very frenetically. Don't get caught up in it. You don't know where you're going. Don't rush. The last thing you want to do is trip and get hurt when you're traveling, and know the trains here come very, very often. So you might just be waiting a couple minutes for the next train. Every time we've rushed and we've missed the train, we were like, why are we doing that? Because it's just a couple minutes for the next one. And also, the trains are perfectly on time in Japan. You see this departure, 2:08. What time is it? 2:08. What time is this train gonna leave? Look at those doors closing. Perfectly on time, 2:08. So you should like definitely set your watch to the real time when you're here, and you'll be running just like clockwork. All right, there it goes. Bye-bye, yellow train. By the way, this is the Ginza line at Shibuya Station, one of my favorite subway stations in Tokyo. What's funny is it's a subway. The station's actually above ground. Don't tell anybody. Japan also has a great infrastructure. Nearly all of their train station of coin lockers. So if you've got luggage with you and you're going someplace and then you're going to another destination, you'll find lockers at most stations that you can lock your stuff up there for just a few hundred yen. Usually the max amount of time that you can leave your stuff at a train station is 72 hours. If you want to know more about how to use the coin lockers, I've got a whole video just on that subject too. Now, a lot of people ask me about the JR pass. It's the like all you can ride train pass. It used to be a no-brainer if you were going from Tokyo to Kyoto, because it was cheaper to buy the JR pass than to buy the bullet train rides round trip between those two cities. But with the price increases, you really have to be riding the bullet train a lot, even more than just that round trip. So think twice now before you buy the JR pass, because many of the trains in Japan are not operated by JR. And so if you buy it, you might find yourself that the trains you want to ride aren't actually valid with that pass. But probably the most amazing and iconic form of transportation in Japan is definitely the bullet train, the Shinkansen, the high-speed rail that takes you throughout most of the country. If you're riding the Shinkansen, you're not going to tap in and you're not going to tap out. You're going to need to buy special tickets to ride the Shinkansen. If you're buying them at the train station, there are special ticket offices to buy your Shinkansen tickets. There's also special ticket machines, but if it's your first time, just go tune to an office. You will find all of the staff speaks English, and just tell them where you want to go, what time you want to get the ticket for, and they will get you the ticket. There are two types of tickets for the Shinkansen. Well, there's actually a few, but there are two types of cars. You can get a ticket for a reserved seat car, and you can have a reserved seat, or you can get an unreserved ticket. If you're getting an unreserved ticket, it's a little bit cheaper because you don't have a seat, but then you'll need to make sure you get on the unreserved car where you sit down. If you are taking an unreserved Shinkansen, you'll want to take it from like the ends of the lines, likely. So here in Tokyo, from Tokyo Station, where it starts, maybe not at Shinagawa, or maybe not at Ueno Station. Those are stations further on at the line, because you might find when you get on it there, all of the unreserved seats are full when you get on it, and then you'll be standing for the whole trip, and that's really a drag. Now, you'll find on the Shinkansen trains, they have like local ones that will like stop at every station, and they'll have rapid ones that go a long way. If you're going a long way, get the rapid one because it's going to be faster. If you have luggage on the Shinkansen, you'll need to tell them when you buy the ticket, because you'll need to get special tickets just for like the back seats at the back of the train. That's where there's little places to store your luggage behind the seats, but there's only like 4 or 5 of these seats in every car. So make sure you reserve it ahead of time if you know you're going to be taking a lot of big luggage with you. And if you're one of those high-tech people that wants to use the digital online stuff to buy your tickets, there is a website that you can buy Shinkansen tickets. It's called the Smart EX website. You can buy your tickets there, you can reserve your seats there, and then the ticket will be a QR code that you scan when you get in and you scan when you get out. Make sure you keep your tickets with you and handy when you're on the train, because they often come down the train and ask you for your tickets. Now, in addition to great trains, the buses in Japan are pretty good too. There are 3 major types of buses that you might be taking. One, the local buses that are often just kind of a flat fare. You will tap in and then that's it. That's generally how you get on that bus. If you are taking a distance-based bus, some of the ones that go longer, then you will tap in and then you will tap out. Usually there will be one door that you go in and another door that you go out. And if you're taking a really long distance bus, they often call them like highway buses or the overnight buses, you'll need to buy a special ticket and have a reservation for those. Now you might also hear about the friendly limousine bus. This is a limousine bus that goes from the airport in Tokyo to a lot of the hotels. It's a great way if you're at a hotel that's not near a train station to just show up right there in front of your doorstep. Cheaper than taking a taxi, but it's likely going to make a few stops on the way to your hotel, so plan for a little extra time if you're doing the airport friendly limousine bus. All right, now I briefly want to touch on driving because I have a whole video on driving. The video is titled like why people are scared of driving in Japan, but you'll find out that as you watch that video and you learn all the tips from in there that you'll be well armed to do your drive. But what you should know is that there's very little parking in Japan. Like street parking actually doesn't exist. There's really no street parking. So park in a parking lot, and if you're in any city, really expect to pay for parking. Oh, now if you need to park your car at your hotel, many big city hotels don't have parking. There's just not enough land. So if you need a hotel that has parking at it, make sure you research that ahead of time. Now, if you want the freedom of driving without the hassle, ride the taxis. The taxis in Japan are great. The drivers are professional, polite. The cars are clean. They are expensive. Japanese taxis are known as some of the most expensive taxis in the world, so you're paying for the niceness of the taxis. Now, to get into a taxi, don't try to open the taxi door. The driver has a special button and they will open the door for you. They'll open it so that you can get in, and then they'll open it so that you can get out. Taxis will take payment by cash and tons of digital currencies. Visa, MasterCard, American Express, no problem. And the new, semi-new Go Taxi app. Yes, the great way to get a taxi if you're not someplace that has a taxi rank. Tokyo Station has a taxi rank. It's just over there. But if you're not near a taxi rank there or at your hotel, this app called Go Taxi is basically like an Uber for taxis. You stand someplace, you put in your destination, and it will call a taxi to you. The great part about using Go Taxi is you don't need to try to communicate with the taxi driver about where you're going. It'll just already be loaded up for them, and then the way you'll pay for that trip is it'll just be paid for out of the credit card that you registered on the Go Taxi app. Now, you do need to register for an account, provide a phone number and a credit card before you can use that. I recommend you do it while you're still at home and make sure you get all that to work before you're trying to do it in country on the street corner when you really need a ride. Now, you may be thinking, Chris, what about Uber? Does Uber exist in Japan? It does, but it's not really. It's not the Uber that you've probably come to know and like, and by that, the Ubers, what they'll call taxis. So if you use Uber, you'll be calling a taxi and paying a bunch of Uber surcharges on it, and it'll be more expensive than what you'll pay out of the Go Taxi app, so just use Go Taxi. If you do think you'll be taking taxis from the taxi ranks, like back to your hotel, get a Take Me To card from your hotel. Every hotel in Japan will generally have these cards, and in Japanese, it'll be written, take me to my hotel, here is the address. If you are showing addresses to taxi drivers in Japan, don't show them the English address to them. That might not mean a lot to them because not all taxi drivers speak English. Show them the Japanese address. So like off a hotel website, where it says English and then it says Japanese, click Japanese, print out the map, and that's the one you'll want to show the taxi driver. That's how they'll know how to actually get where you want to go to. Yeah, and actually on this trip, I've been taking taxis quite a bit. I'm staying at the ANA Intercontinental Hotel, and it's about like a 10-minute walk from the nearest subway station. And so taxis are a lot more convenient, and a lot of times it's only like 20 bucks to get where I'm going, and a difference between like 45 minutes if I took public transportation or 15 minutes if I took the taxi. Sometimes people watch my videos and say, Chris, you waste a lot of money on taxis. But you know what, for me, that 30 minutes means another video that I can make. So I'm actually doing it for you. And the final way to get around that I want to mention is bicycling. You'll find a lot of people, particularly in the smaller cities, riding bikes to get around. Even in Tokyo, you'll find a lot of people cycling. They do it less as a leisure activity and much more as a, I'm using this to get someplace. Some cities have like the municipal bicycles that you can rent. And the other pro thing about bicycles, you can actually ride them on the sidewalk in Japan. So that makes it a little bit safer for you as a bike. You don't have to contend with the cars on the street. Oh, just make sure you park the bicycle in a legal place. Where I mentioned that you often have to pay to park your car, you may often have to pay to park your bicycle too. But what you don't have to worry about is you don't have to worry about people stealing your bicycle, since Japan is such a safe country. Just a small little tiny lock will be enough to deter the worst of thieves here. The fifth thing to know is about mobile data and staying connected on your cell phone while in Japan, a question I get all of the time. And so we've done a few different things in the past for getting mobile data in Japan, and I'll share all three options with you. First, just getting a standard SIM card. You can pick them up at a lot of stores when you get here. Two, we've also rented pocket Wi-Fis. Pocket Wi-Fi, it's like a mobile router, like a Wi-Fi router. It basically has one SIM card in it, and then your whole group can tether to that. We've used Ninja Wi-Fi, where you basically pick it up at the airport, you use it for your whole trip. It's great if you have a lot of people traveling with you that all want to get on the internet. It's great for OC Girl, myself, our daughter, the Curious Princess, all to just basically connect via Wi-Fi to that to get data. But my new favorite way to get mobile data while I'm traveling internationally is to use an eSIM. The great thing about using eSIMs is you can get it all set up from the comfort of your home before you leave, and you don't have to pick up any physical things once you get to your destination, and you definitely don't have to hunt for the Ninja Wi-Fi desk wherever it is in Haneda Airport. Now for this trip, I got one from my favorite eSIM provider and the sponsor of this video, SimLocal. SimLocal is an eSIM marketplace where you can pick from a variety of different providers and packages depending upon your data and length of stay needs, all for a really good price. I got the 7-day unlimited data eSIM from AU, and it was $19. That's a super good deal. The whole process from purchase to installation took less than 5 minutes. When I landed in Japan, all I had to do was toggle on the eSIM, and voila, I had data right away, even before getting into the airport from the comfort of my airplane seat. By the way, it's actually really hard to get a phone number in Japan. So the eSIMs or the SIM cards that you would like pick up or buy from a random vendor or the pocket Wi-Fi does not come with a phone number. If you want to get a phone number in Japan, that's a much more bigger thing about, like, you gotta apply and you gotta like prove who you are. So data only, probably the way to go for most visitors. Oh, if you do want to use SimLocal to get your eSIM, the way I did it, you can use code YELLOW over there and you'll get yourself 10% off. Oh, and before I go, where am I right now? This is Tsukiji Fish Market. Well, there was a big fish market here, but the Tsukiji neighborhood, it's still a whole neighborhood dedicated to seafood. I just had myself a uni seafood bowl that was really quite delicious. The sixth thing to know is about the weather and when to go. And by the way, where am I? Just kind of on a random street corner on my way from Tsukiji to Ginza. Japan experiences all 4 seasons: summer, spring, fall, and winter. So everything from, yes, oppressive humid heat in the summer. Japan is a very humid, muggy place in the summer, to winter where there's snow, wonderful powder snow. Generally, the snow is only in the mountainous areas. The big cities like Tokyo generally don't get any snow. Japan is generally colder the more north you go, so Hokkaido is the coldest and Kyushu is the warmest. Okay, Okinawa's the warmest, but I told you I wasn't talking about Okinawa in this video. Why do you keep bringing Okinawa up anyway? But speaking of the snow, if you are a snowbird, you like the snow, you like to snowboard, you like to ski, you will like the snow in Japan. It is generally regarded as powder snow. It is so light and fluffy that you can just blow it right off your hand. I think the best times to visit Japan are spring and fall. Spring, March, April are quintessential cherry blossom season. That is probably the #1 best time to go. I think the weather is best in the spring. It is not yet hot and humid. The cherry blossoms are blooming, so it's really quite beautiful. Note the cherry blossoms also bloom earliest in the south and bloom latest in the north. If you want to know when the best time is for where you're going, you can check out like these bloom sites. They have like predictions as to when they're going to bloom this year, on average when they've bloomed previous years, but it's best to travel the country from south to north doing it, hoping that you'll catch it the most. The con of coming in the spring is it's going to be probably the most expensive because that's actually when everybody wants to come during cherry blossom season. Another great time to come is definitely in the fall. Fall is famous for the changing colors of the leaves across Japan. I am here in November and I'm still still wearing short sleeves, as you've probably seen. So the weather can still be quite nice, especially in the big cities in the fall. You'll find the hotel rates to be cheaper in the fall than in the spring. Chris, what about the summer? Well, I told you, one, the summer is hot and humid and really kind of quite miserable in the cities. Maybe better if you're going to the mountains, maybe better if you're going to Hokkaido. But two, the end of the summer is also like the rainy season. So it's going to be the hottest and it's also going to be the wettest. But Japan does rain a lot almost any season that you're in, and so I would highly recommend you bring an umbrella whatever season that you're in. If you don't want to bring one, no, I was chasing a fly away. Just know that 7-Eleven also sells tons of umbrellas for pretty cheap, like 500 yen, so don't stand out getting soaked. Pick an umbrella at a convenience store if you forgot to bring one. Now, if you wonder, Chris, how long should I go for on my first trip? I would recommend at least a week, and even better, 2 weeks. The seventh thing to know is about vending machines, and probably after the public transit, the vending machines in Japan are the second best thing about this country. There are more vending machines in Japan, I think, than there are people. Okay, that's not true, but there are more vending machines in Japan per capita than in any other country. There are so many vending machines, they are like everywhere. They will be on the side of roads, there'll be friendly people walking by, waving, they'll be here in the side of parking lots, and what's so great about them, let me turn this around other than just that they're everywhere. They are clean, they are well stocked, they are inexpensive, they have a big variety of drinks. We've got teas, we've got coffees, some vending machines will even have hot drinks in addition to cold drinks. You get these, they're cold, you get these, they're hot, like 150 yen. They take coins, they take bills. Some vending machines will even take Suica cards, and so you are never far from a beverage in Japan. You're just as far from a vending machine. So it's worthwhile to carry some small bills or some coins with you. Generally, the vending machines don't take credit cards, but that way you'll never be thirsty, particularly on a hot day. You'll wanna enjoy these drinks in the summer, because yes, they'll be ice cold in there. The eighth thing to know is about the language, and it's Japanese, of course, but it's actually not just that simple. There's actually different dialects of Japanese, so you might have been taught the traditional Tokyo one, but there's actually different dialects around the country. You go to Osaka, and they speak a little bit differently down there. Now, you're probably wondering, Chris, do I need to know Japanese? Can I get by if I only speak English? I only speak English. I don't really speak much Japanese. I speak a little bit of Japanese. I know some phrases. I can say like, Mizu kudasai, please give me water, or Biru kudasai, please give me beer. So yes, it's useful in any country you go to, including Japan, to learn a few phrases so that you can say Ohayo, good morning, or you can say arigato, thank you very much, but you definitely do not have to be fluent in Japanese to come to Japan. In the big cities, you will find most of the young people speak English. They've all been taught English in schools, but although while they understand it, they may not be able to speak it very well. Why? They don't get a lot of chances to practice speaking it. You'll find the older generations will know a few phrases. They'll know things like check this one to go. For here, like 2-word phrases are phrases that they know. You sit in a taxi, you know, they'll know address, do you have an address? They'll know seatbelt please, but they won't be able to carry on a long conversation with you. In the subways in the big cities, you will find them all to be signed in English and also announced in English. And you'll find many of the train staff will have a little badge that says like English, or they'll have like a flag on it to show you that they speak English. You'll also find a lot of staff at information centers where they'll have signs to say like English available. And in a place like Tokyo, you'll find tons of English restaurants at menus. If you don't see one, you can always ask the staff, do you have an English menu? And worst comes to worst, if you're in a restaurant and you can't speak Japanese and they don't have an English menu, just use the point and order method. They have all that plastic food that's out in front. You can take a picture of it out in front and then bring it into the restaurant and say, this one, or at the menu, if the menu has pictures, same thing, you can just say this one and this one. I do that quite a bit. Now, if you're going out into the suburbs, like you're going out into the Japanese countryside, the English language menus, the English language signage does tend to fall off, and so you'll need to be a little bit braver if you're heading out of the main metropolitan pockets of civilization. Oh, by the way, if you're wondering where I am right now, I am definitely in one of the big metropolitan pockets. I am at the rooftop garden of Ginza 6. This is one of Tokyo's major department stores, and pretty much every department store And many of the department stores across Japan have these things, rooftop gardens. They're free to come in, open to the public, have lunch, relax, chill out, and enjoy the view. Great views of here. You can see down the main Ginza Street, and you can see like the multi-story Uniqlo flagship. It's just a cool perspective to come up to these rooftop areas, and it's neat how they maintain them just for public use. I mean, I'm sure they really want you to do some shopping while you're here, which I just may. Let me go see what Ginza 6 has to offer. Oh, and one more thing that's like kind of funny about Japanese that you should know when you come here is they definitely use a lot of loan words from English. They take the English word and they just like modify it ever so slightly. So for example, if you were ordering a hamburger in Japan, hamburger. If you were getting a coffee in Japan, kohi. So the Japanese words for some things legitimately sound like words you already know. So if you don't know the Japanese, just try the English, because chances are it might actually be close to the Japanese. All right, as I'm leaving the rooftop garden, just to tell you how ubiquitous vending machines are, they actually have a sign here to tell people the vending machines, they're down one floor, because no doubt there's people that are up here to be like, where is my vending machine? What do you mean I have to go downstairs a floor? The ninth thing to know is about etiquette, and there's a lot of etiquette in Japanese society. As a visitor, you'll probably get a pass from most of their social norms, but there's a few things that you should be familiar with. First, their typical greeting here, not a handshake, it's a bow. The deeper the bow, the more respect you're showing to the other person you're greeting. If you're a Westerner, they might greet you with a handshake just because they think that that's what you do, but that's generally not their preference here. If you're handing something to somebody, like let's say you're here for business and you want to hand them a business card, you will always hand it with two hands, and you will receive things with two hands. I'd use two, except one of my hands is holding the camera. Same thing for money. If you're getting money or you're getting back money, you would hand it with two hands. Although in many shops, if they have a little dish in front of you, that's where you place your money. You place your money in the dish, and then they will put your change in the dish. In that case, you don't actually hand them the money. But back on the note of business cards, if you are exchanging business cards, when you get a business card from somebody, you are to look at it and you are to study it intently. You are to look at their name, you are to look at their title, you are to admire it a bit before you put it away. Don't just take it and put it away, because then they'll think, oh, they're not very important to you because you didn't even look at the card. Oh, and by the way, where am I right now? I am at the Shibuya Scrabble crossing in Shibuya. This is the crossing where they cross like thousands of people in every direction every few minutes. This is right out in front of JR Shibuya Station, and there's a famous spot here with a statue of Hachiko. Hachiko the dog. There's a famous story about this dog. I won't add it to this video, but the #1 meeting place, like in Shibuya, if you want to say like, hey, for the friends to meet, where are we going to meet? #1 spot to say, hey, let's meet up by the statue of Hachiko. Oh, but if you're someplace in Japan and you've really lost your way, just ask for help. You will find the Japanese are very polite and often will go out of their way to help you. It might seem like in places like Tokyo where you might feel like, oh, Japan says it's over-touristed and they hate tourists. They don't, because they know a big part of their economy runs on tourism, and so most Japanese people really appreciate tourists and people who want to come and visit Japan and enjoy their country. A couple of memorable things I have about asking some Japanese locals. One time, Osi girl and I, we were really lost in Kyoto. This was in the world before Google Maps and cell phones, and we had no idea where we were going. And so we asked somebody where the train station was. She really didn't speak much English, but she's like, I'll take you there. And it was not the direction she was walking. She walked 15 minutes out of her way to get us to the train station and then go back on her way. So you'll find that the Japanese really do want to help. And if you're in a store or something like that and you ask them, like, do they have something in this and that, and they like run away to find out, make sure you're there to like actually receive that help when they do come back. Because what they might do when they're looking for help and they hear you speaking English is they might also be looking for that English-speaking staff. The 10th thing you should know is about timeliness, and being on time in Japan is very important. Now, I certainly mentioned earlier, the trains are on time. They're so on time that the bullet trains, if they're like 15 minutes late, they have to apologize profusely for being late. So definitely set your watch, not just for the trains, but for dinner reservations. If you make a dinner reservation and you're more than 15 minutes late for that reservation, you might not as even well show up at that point because they're pretty sure you're not coming. And I'm not kidding, like the grace period at some places for dinner reservations might only be 5 minutes. Hotels are often sticklers to check-in time as well. I've been to many hotels where the check-in time has been 3 p.m. I've gotten there 10 minutes before at 2:50 p.m. and they've told me to have a seat to wait until 3 p.m. till they're ready for me to check in. You'll also find stores and restaurants close and open promptly based on their opening times. Restaurants, in addition to a closing time, will typically post a last order time, 30 minutes or an hour before closing. That's the last time that you can order food. And stores, if they say they close at 8 p.m., that's when they close, and you can shop until 7:59, and then 8 o'clock, they'll promptly be like, okay, everybody, get out. The 11th thing to know is about food, and by the way, where am I right now? I'm by all of these tables in front of Suntory Hall, a busy place when it's actually lunchtime, but I'm here a little bit early before that, so I've got the whole area all to myself. All right, the number one question people ask me about food in Japan is they say, Chris, if I don't eat seafood or sushi, is there anything else to eat in Japan? And the good news is yes, there's tons of other food more than just seafood and sushi. We'll start for cheap eats first, and then we'll go up to maybe some of the more expensive or premium eats. So if you're looking for some of the cheapest eats in Japan, you're going to find those at the convenience stores. 7-Eleven, Lawson Station. 7-Eleven, Lawson Station, and Family Mart are three of the big ones, and you might be thinking, Chris, I don't want a really old hot dog from 7-Eleven. The food at 7-Eleven, 7-Eleven's actually a Japanese-owned company now, and the food in Japan is actually fresh. It's really delicious, so you can get lots of great food at the convenience stores. There's whole YouTubers that do videos about what $10 would get them at a convenience store, and you can absolutely get a full meal at a Japanese convenience store for under $10. Another great place to find cheap eats is in the basement level of department stores. Pretty much every big department store across Japan in some basement level will have a food hall, and the food hall will have prepared foods, foods that you can take to go, really delicious things, and usually a lot cheaper than if you were getting it from a sit-down restaurant. And you can take that food, go find a park bench or go find a place like this to sit down and eat it. That's the problem of many of these department store food halls. You usually can't eat it there. In the department store food halls, they often do big discounts 1 hour before closing, so many times they close at 8 p.m. So if you come at 7 p.m., you'll usually be able to get things for a significant discount because they don't want any leftover food tomorrow. Okay, now if you're trying to find other spots to eat, how do you find them? And it's not going to be on TripAdvisor, and it's not going to be on Yelp. The site that you use in Japan is called Tabelog. Tabelog, it's what all the Japanese use to review restaurants. Yes, many of the reviews are going to be in Japanese, but the ratings are something you can absolutely trust on. You should know that Japanese, they rate very hard. So on Yelp, you might look at a restaurant and be like, oh, 4.5 stars, that must mean it's pretty good. Like in Japan, if it has 3.5 stars, that's pretty good because they're really tough raters. If you see a restaurant that is above 3.3 as the rating on Tabelog, it's probably going to be really busy and might require a reservation ahead of time. Many restaurants in Japan are very small, and so if they do take reservations, you should make them, because if the place only has 6 tables, you want to make sure you get one of them. Also, you should know lunch in Japan, highly scheduled. Most office workers get lunch from 12 to 1 p.m., so if you want to avoid the lunchtime rush, eat outside of those hours. For me, when I'm in Japan, I usually like to get up early, have breakfast right when they open, like this morning at 6:30, then get lunch at 11, and then get dinner at 5 o'clock. That way I'm just ahead of all the crowds. I should caveat that to say that's like big city stuff. That's if I'm in Tokyo or Osaka. If I'm in the Japanese countryside, not a big deal. People are sleeping in there, and the restaurants not too busy. All right, so now let me share with you some of my favorite things to eat while I'm in Japan. And yes, I'm going to start with sushi. The sushi in Japan, out of this world. Well, it's not out of this world. It's Japanese. It's where sushi is from. But if you've ever had sushi before and not liked it because you got it at some really cheap sushi place, give sushi in Japan a try. You might change your mind. That's what I did. I hated sushi for the first 24 years of my life until I came to Japan and had what real sushi tastes like, and then my mind was absolutely blown and absolutely changed. Now, when I come back to the U.S., I can't eat any of that gas station or supermarket sushi anymore. Chris, did you really eat supermarket at the gas station? No. But the supermarket sushi, well, that's what people would try to feed me. I'm like, this isn't good at all, because it isn't. Also, you can consider not just getting your sushi in sushi form, but you can get it in seafood bowl form. Seafood bowls are really popular, where you get a bowl of rice and then they put seafood up on top. I usually find seafood bowl places are a little less stuffy than sit-down sushi places. Okay, definitely OC Girl's favorite thing to eat when she's here after sushi is noodles. Japan has a lot of different noodles. Ramen, probably the most famous variety. These are egg noodles. Udon, these are flour noodles. And soba, buckwheat noodles, generally served with soup, but you can often get them in the soupless variety. You can also get many of these in a cold soup too if it's a hot day. Not ramen. Ramen and cold soup would be kind of weird, but udon and soba, you can get cold versions of those. You can never go wrong with meat on a stick. Yakitori is what they call meat on a stick that's generally grilled over a charcoal fire. You also can't go wrong with pork that's been breaded and fried. They call that katsu. If you want to get it in a bowl with rice with some egg, that's a katsudon. A restaurant chain that I really love in Japan, but unfortunately has been dwindling in their numbers, is called Pepper Lunch. They make these really great sizzling beef rice plates. For dessert, I love the pudding in Japan. The pudding at the convenience stores is good, but the pudding at dedicated pudding shops is even better. Yes, there are stores in Japan that all they sell is pudding. And if you've never had Japanese pudding, you should try it while you're here. It's another one that'll change your mind completely about what pudding can taste like. One of my favorite desserts just to get on the quick is taiyaki right here. This thing that looks like a fish. It's literally a fish. It comes with like different fillings inside. It's hot. And so my favorite filling is custard, but you can get it with like red bean and sweet potato. A little warm. And I've got that custard filling. It tastes like a creme brulee. Tasty. Fruit is also amazing in Japan, but also amazingly expensive. Think like if you're getting a pack of 10 strawberries to spend $20 on that pack of 10 strawberries. If you're getting like a melon, like a cantaloupe or a honeydew type melon, like an orange or green melon, you might be paying $20, $30, or $40 for that melon. Is it worth it? I mean, the taste is probably going to be the best melon or the best strawberry you've ever had. You'll have to decide whether it's worth the price, but I think it's worth the price to at least taste it. If you're at a hotel that has a breakfast buffet, definitely stock up on the strawberries and the melons. Oh, and the grapes too. They're really good as well. They're really big into matcha everything here. Matcha is a type of green tea, and you get matcha not just to drink, but also to eat, like matcha ice cream. You get like matcha crepes. I got a matcha crepe the other day that had some matcha ice cream in the crepe. At first look, you might look at the crepe and it looks green, and so you might think it's spinach. It's not. It's matcha. Now, Japan certainly has the type of restaurants that you sit down and you order from a server. They've got the types of restaurants that you order at a counter. They've also got restaurants that you order at a vending machine. The way that works is you go in, right at the front, or maybe outside, there'll be a vending machine. You put your money in, usually these are cash only, and then you push a button of the food that you want. It spits out a ticket, and then you take that ticket and you place it where you're seated, and then the server comes and picks up those tickets, and that's your order. Japan has a lot of bars. The most kind of like Japanese style bars are called izakayas. Izakayas in the big cities can be really popular, can often have a time limit to be there. Like there might be a sign to say like limited to 90 minutes. So if you're someone who likes to linger for a while, do pay attention to that. Also, do beware of like all you can drink specials. You'll see bars that are advertising these things like an hour of all you can drink. The reason why you need to be beware is that price is often only for the first hour, and then they don't tell you what the price of the drinks is after that. And so it might be, 2,000 yen for an hour, all you can drink. But then the next drink that you order after that hour can cost you twice as much as the first hour to begin with. And they usually don't tell you when your hour's up as well, so pay attention to your watch so you know when the drinks aren't free anymore. In busy areas of Japan, like central train stations, you will find standing restaurants that have no place to sit, just high tables to stand at. You'll find noodles, sushi, even high-end steak served in standing restaurants. All right, now you'll find a few different types of tables that you can sit at in Japan. The standard Western table. You will also find tatami tables. If you're seated at a tatami table on a tatami mat, then it means you need to take your shoes off before you go in there. And then you'll find this kind of like hybrid combination, which is a tatami booth. In this case, you're actually seated up on the tatami. You put your feet down in there, and for most of these, you take your shoes off, too. You should also know they're not really like big into Western breakfast in Japan. Caveat, you will find lots of hotels that serve a Western breakfast, but the Western breakfast does not taste like a full English or an American breakfast. Everything is going to be a little bit different. The eggs are often, in my opinion, a little bit too runny. The bacon is often not crispy enough. The sausages often look like hot dogs. They are like Western-inspired breakfasts is what I would call them. If you're looking for a good Western breakfast, there are some places like, you'll find the Denny's or National House Pancakes, or you'll find Bill's from Australia. But what's interesting about them is they generally don't open like early in the morning. They generally open like at 10 a.m. or later, because pancakes in Japan, if you like pancakes, are often seen more of like as a dessert or mid-afternoon snack than they are a breakfast food, because they're not super big on breakfast here. There's like a Japanese style breakfast, which is basically rice, miso soup, and some fish. Though in modern Japanese society, many Japanese on their way to work will often pick up their breakfast from a bakery or a convenience store and eat it, once they get to their desk in the office building up there. Now, they have taken pancakes to a whole new level. They call them souffle pancakes. They're these really like big fluffy pancakes. Again, they do really feel like a dessert. If you like pancakes, definitely check out their souffle pancakes. The 12th thing to know is about money, and I'm back here in Shibuya again to talk about money, because this is a really big shopping district. And actually, I just shopped at one of my favorite stores in Japan, Loft. They call it the Creative Life Store. You get all sorts of useful items like well, don't tell OC Girl. She might see this before Christmas. But if she doesn't, she got a posture pet right here, which you put at your desk and it helps you keep your good posture. All right, there we go. But so, money. Japan is a heavily cash-based society. COVID certainly has proliferated more acceptance of credit cards, but you'll still want cash when you're out and about. The big restaurants and the big shops, they'll all take Visa, MasterCard, American Express. So will the taxis, of course, so will the hotels. But if you're going to the small mom and pop shops and mom and pop restaurants, that's when you're gonna want cash. As I was walking around Tsukiji earlier today, yes, many of the stores there had signs that say they are cash only. Now, the currency in Japan is the yen, and paper bills start at 1,000 yen. You get 1,000, 5,000, and 10,000 yen. That's about $7 for that 1,000 yen. The coins, you get a 500 yen coin, you get a 100 yen coin, you get 10 5s and 1s that I got in my hand right here. But what you should know about these coins, they can actually be pretty valuable. They add up. Don't just throw the coins away when you get them back. A great way to get rid of the coins, to use them in the vending machines. But a great way not to carry coins, particularly if you're shopping at the convenience stores or things like that, is to absolutely use your IC card, not just at the vending machines, but a lot of small stores will take the IC card for payment, even maybe if they don't take credit cards. So now to the question of where should you get your yen from? Should you exchange it before you leave home? Should you exchange it when you get here? The answer to both of those is neither. You should bring an ATM card or a debit card or a bank card, and you should get money out of the ATMs at 7-Eleven. 7-Eleven ATMs have become so widely used that you'll find them more than just at 7-Eleven, but out and about around the city. Do note, though, that ATMs in Japan aren't necessarily open 24/7, so you might want to make sure that you don't need cash at 2 in the morning. Otherwise, you might be finding a hard time to find a machine that's going to give it to you. I don't know. The machines, they need to go to sleep or something, I guess. And if you visit Japan on an international passport, which chances are you are if you're watching this video, if you live in Japan, you would know all of these things already. So when you're visiting Japan, you can get your tax back, which is a great deal for shopping here. The tax rate, 10%, and you can get 8.5% back if you make purchases over about 5,000 yen. You generally have to make them all in one store. And generally the way this works is you make your purchases first, and then at most stores you go to a different place to get cash back or get the taxes back. If you paid by cash, they'll generally give you cash back. If you paid by credit card, they'll definitely put that back on there. You'll need to have your passport, and then they'll put your stuff in a plastic bag that you're supposed to keep sealed as you go back to the airport to take it home. Related to money, the 13th thing you need to know is about tipping, and pretty simply put, they don't tip in Japan. It's really not a thing. They don't tip at restaurants, they don't tip in taxis, they don't tip in hotels. Nobody's gonna be standing in Japan with their hand out waiting you to grease their palms with a few yen. Historically, tipping has even been considered an insult, sort of like, what, you don't think that I make enough money that you need to give me a tip? Now, that being said, there have been some younger people in Japan that have maybe come to Western places and seen tipping culture, and so you might find some of the newer business establishments run by younger people to be open to tipping, but it's definitely not a thing that's required as it is in like the USA, where like if you don't tip them, they're like, oh, how dare you? All right, the next thing you should know is about trash. And the first time I came to Japan, I couldn't find any trash cans. And I'm like, where are all of the public trash cans? And the answer is they're just are very, very few public trash cans. Why? Well, it's sort of a Japanese culture to not generate trash, rubbish, waste while you're out and about to make it somebody else's problem. Instead, Japanese people generally will carry like a plastic bag with them, and then when they have trash, they will put it in the plastic bag, and then they will take their trash home. So option one for you is to do that. Take it back to your hotel, throw it away back to your hotel. Option two, if you're out and about, because you often won't find trash cans in parks or public bathrooms, find like a shopping mall or something like that to throw them away. Another option is to find a convenience store. Most convenience stores, 7-Eleven, Family Mart, Lawson Station, will have trash cans. If they're not outside, they might be inside. Do beware, in many places the trash is separated into like a lot of different bins. Compostables, combustibles, recyclables, so make sure you're putting your stuff in the correct bin. And finally, if you're taking the bullet train, don't take your stuff off the train and find a place in the train station to throw it away. Throw your stuff away on the train, because generally on the train there's just trash. So it's just the trash you generate on the train, throw it away on the train. Now, one place you definitely won't find trash cans are in public toilets or public restrooms. Why? Well, because they generally don't do paper towels here in the restrooms. And two, because Japanese people generally bring handkerchiefs with them to wipe their hands in these restrooms, and so there will be no trash cans. You will find in many restrooms even signs to say, please don't leave your trash here. Take it with you. The 15th thing to know is about where to go if you need to go, and by that I mean if you need to go to the toilet. By the way, where am I right now? I'm at the Azubadai Hills development. This is near Roppongi. It's got like shops, offices, houses, and it's also got the new Team Lab Borderless interactive art exhibition, which is pretty cool. I did that last night. It was lots of fun. All right, so toilets. What you should know about toilets in Japan is they are generally clean, plentiful, free. What you also need to know about the toilet situation is that they're amazing. They're fantastic. They're often these Toto washlets that when you sit on them, you can push a button and clean your bottom. That's right, clean your bottom, clean your front, clean yourself. You can play music if you want to for some of them. They deodorize, they're amazing. In Japanese hotels, you might walk into the toilet and the lid just might open when you come in there. And when you get up, then the toilet might just flush right away. If you do sit on a toilet in a hotel and water starts to run, you didn't break the toilet, don't worry. That's just the toilet heating up the water for you in case you're gonna use that bidet setting. Now, if you're not in your hotel and you're out and about, where are you gonna find toilets? You'll find them in any big type mall type district. You'll certainly find them in restaurants. You will also find them conveniently in train stations. Pretty much every train station has toilets, and so that's just like a learned habit going around Japan, is to use the toilet before you leave the train station and you go out and about touristing. They are often in the paid areas of the station, so that's why it's useful to use when you get off the train before you exit the wickets. In the big cities, pretty much all the toilets are going to be Western type toilets where you sit on them. But if you're going out into rural Japan, you might encounter some squatty potties. What's a squatty potty? It's one where you don't sit on it, but you squat over it. It basically looks like a hole in the ground with maybe a porcelain hood over it. The way you use this is you generally face the porcelain hood, and then you go onto the porcelain part of it. Don't go into the hole, because if you go into the hole, you might get a big splash up afterwards, and that's going to be no good. If you don't think you're very good at squatting and aiming, then you actually might want to take off your pants entirely to do this if you have to use one of these things. But if you are in a public toilet situation where there are the squatty potties, you might want to check some of the other stalls, because they might have some Western toilets too. They generally have signs on the outside of the stalls to indicate what type of toilet it is. But don't let this turn you off from going to Japan, because you'll likely only encounter these if you go far, far, far away from the big cities. In the big cities, you'll often find the toilets that are heated, wash you, and play music. Number 16 is about Japan with kids. Another question I get all the time is, Chris, I'm thinking about going to Japan with my kids. Is it kids friendly? And to that, I will give an enthusiastic yes, absolutely it is. Now, the big cities, like any big cities, are gonna be less kid friendly than the countryside. Why is that? Well, turns out most people tend to raise their kids in the countryside, where houses are bigger, cheaper, you get more space for your kids to run around. Now, if you are considering coming to the big cities, if you've got kids in strollers or things like that, the challenge is going to be navigating the steps and elevators and escalators to go down to the subway or to the trains. So you might just want to resign yourself to taking taxis everywhere, or getting a hotel in a good base that you can just walk around, or getting out of the big cities entirely and renting a car. That's what we did on our last trip with our 4-year-old daughter. We flew into Tokyo Haneda Airport, we picked up a rental car, we went down and checked out the countryside, including Atami, the Izu Peninsula, the Fuji 5 Lakes region, and then we spent 2 days back back in Tokyo. We found a hotel where we could park our car, and then we returned it at the airport. That way we could carry the stroller around, we could carry all the baby gear around, and it was great. She absolutely loved it. Our daughter absolutely loved Japan, and of all the places that we've been to, it's the one place that she asks to go back to. She's like, Papa, when are we going back to Japan? Can we go back to Japan? Let's go back to Japan. Now, if you're looking for restaurants, there are definitely going to be restaurants that are more kid-friendly than others. This is one that I hear a lot of times people complain about. They say, like, I went to a restaurant, they didn't have a place I could park my stroller, they didn't have high chairs. You will certainly find that in the big cities, in the ramen shops that are near the train station. They're small, there's not much space, and so they're just not going to have the facilities for kids. But if you get into the bigger restaurants, the ones that are in the shopping malls or the department stores, pretty much every shopping mall or department store is going to have like a food floor. I talked about the food halls down in the basement. Usually the food floors will be up a few floors. You'll find tons of bigger restaurants, and those will typically have facilities for your kids. They might even have kids menus. They might even have toys for your kids to play with. When we went to Royal Host near Mount Fuji, it's a Japanese Western restaurant. They literally brought a box of toys to the table, and our daughter could pick one to play with while she was there, and even take it home with her, but just to keep her entertained. Super sweet. The 17th thing to know is about hotels, and what better place to do this scene than from the hotel room that I'm staying in right now, the ANA Intercontinental Hotel, with a great view of Tokyo Tower out the window. Oh, and my traveling panda Topher, who was just helping me review this hotel room, has come to join me for this section. So what you should know about hotels in Japan is that hotel rooms in Japan are typically small, they're typically clean, but they're also typically tired. What do I mean by that? I mean that like many hotels in Japan are old. Like if you're in a 40-year-old hotel, it might be like well worn. You know, at 40 years, they'll be trying to maintain it, but there are just many hotels in Japan where you go in there and you're like, oh, the golden era of this hotel has definitely passed. I mean, not this one, the ANA Intercontinental. They've just done a full remodel, and so it's nice and fresh, but this is something you have to be aware of when you're booking hotels in Japan. Now, the best hotels to stay in Japan are generally going to be the ones that are close to train stations or on top of train stations, because being close to the train and being easy to get around is paramount when you're visiting this country. A rule of thumb I would say about like how close do you need to be to a train station? Ideally less than 5 minutes. If you're 10 minutes away from a train or subway station, then you're right on the border of whether I consider that close enough or not. That's actually my biggest issue with this hotel, the ANA Intercontinental. It's about a 10-minute walk to the subway stations from here, and so I found myself most of the time taking taxis to get around because it was just such a long walk to the subway. Now, of course, if you're looking to save some money, the further away you get from a train station, generally the cheaper the hotels get, because in Japan, everybody wants to be as close to a train station as possible. Not just for the trains, but generally near train stations is also where you'll find food, restaurants, and shopping, just generally the stuff that you want to do. If you're at a hotel that like provides a shuttle to the nearest train station, beware. Now, if you're coming to Japan during a popular season like cherry blossoms, you will want to book well in advance. What do I mean by well in advance? I mean like 3 to 6 months in advance, particularly if you're coming to some place like Tokyo, particularly if you want to stay with some of the big Western chains, the Marriotts, the Hyatts, the Hiltons of the world. Lots of people are competing for those same rooms and are also booking out early. Now, if you want to save a little bit of money, don't book with the big Western chains, book with the local Japanese chains. Why is that? Well, I feel like the Western chains can be, 25 to 50% more than many of their local counterparts. Some local chains you might want to look at is the Nikko hotels, the ANA hotels, JR hotels, JAL, Japan Airlines hotels, and one of our new recent favorites, the Hoshino Resorts hotels. We recently stayed in Atami at the Hoshino Resorts Resonari Hotel. It was totally themed for kids. It had a ball pit in it. Our daughter, the Curious Princess, absolutely loved that hotel. If you want to be on the real budget side of things, take a look at Toyoko Inn. They call this a business hotel in Japan, and it's not the same thing as like an American business hotel that we consider a Marriott. Japanese business hotels are like just meant for sleeping, just meant for one night, and so the rooms are going to be absolutely tiny, the kind of room where like you open the door and it probably hits the bed, and there's probably no chair, and you sit on the bed to get to the desk, but the room prices are going to be dirt cheap. but the hotel is still going to be absolutely clean and functional. Now, I'd say this day and age, most hotels in Japan are Western style hotels. What does that mean? It means that you sleep on a mattress on kind of an elevated bed. But if you want the true Japanese experience, then you'll want to stay in a ryokan or a traditional Japanese style inn. I'm going to talk more about those when I get to the section on hot springs, because generally traditional Japanese style inns come with hot springs, though that's not always the case. But I feel like the ones that are still successful today and do well are traditional Japanese style inns that are in onsen or hot spring towns. You won't find a lot of traditional Japanese style inns in central Tokyo. Now, if you really want to save some money, you can definitely get creative in your hotel type. Yes, there are the capsule hotels that are world famous. These things that you basically just get like a small bunk or almost like coffin that you sleep in. There are manga cafes, like places that are coffee shops. You can read comic books. You can like sleep in a chair in a cafe overnight. There are love hotels that you can rent by the hour. So you can definitely save if you're willing to be a little creative. Oh, of course there's hostels too. There's even hostels where maybe you can like do some work for your room if you don't have any money at all. Now, when you're looking at Japanese hotels and rooms, beware, there are lots of different plans and room types. If you stay at a Holiday Inn, it's all just kind of one room in the whole hotel, but not in Japanese hotels. They will have many different kinds of rooms, from small to slightly less small. Do also beware that the occupancy of many Japanese hotel rooms is 2. And so if you've got more than 2 people, definitely make sure when you're searching that you bump that up so you're actually getting the rooms that could hold 3 or more people. Japanese hotels can be pretty big sticklers about it. Like if they see you showing up with 3 people and you've only booked a room for 2 people, they might not let you check in or they might charge you more. So make sure you do that ahead of time. Also, do beware that there are many Japanese hotels that still have smoking rooms. So it's not a given that all rooms are non-smoking, so do make sure if you don't like to be in a smoky room that you've booked a non-smoking one. And just a kind of a cool note about Japanese hotels, most of them will accept Amazon or online shopping packages for you. So if there's some things you really want to buy when you're in Japan and you can't make it to the shop, you can't make it to Yodobashi to get those electronics, you can order them on Amazon, have them delivered to your hotel with your name and your room number on it, or even if you don't have a room, just your name on it, and they will get it up to you in your room or hold it down at the front desk and you can go and pick it up. I mean, it's probably worthwhile for you to check with the hotel just to make sure and let them know that you're expecting some packages, but every Japanese hotel that I've ever stayed at was happy to accept packages for me. And the 18th thing to know, I mentioned this in the previous one, is about hot springs. Hot springs, really popular thing to do while you're in Japan is go and bathe in the water that's been heated by all the volcanic activity on this island of a country. Now, the thing you need to know about the hot springs in Japan is they are generally called onsens here. That's the Japanese word for a hot spring. And you can enjoy the hot springs in a couple different varieties. Probably the highest and nicest experience is if you're going to an onsen hotel. These are usually traditional Japanese style hotels where they will have hot spring baths for the hotel guests. Sometimes you can, if you're not a hotel guest, pay to go in during the daytime, a little extra. But the good thing about being a hotel guest is then maybe at nighttime where they don't let the public in, then you have those baths all to yourselves. Hot spring baths in Japan are generally gender separate and fully nude. You're nude so that when you go in, you don't make the water dirty from your swimsuit or clothes or things like that, which means that you need to take a shower and clean yourself off before you go and relax in the hot spring. If you're not into that, you absolutely can get hotels that do have private hot spring baths. We stayed at the Marriott in Mount Fuji. It had a private hot spring bath in the room. We also stayed at another hot spring hotel that had private hot springs outside of the hotel room. So there are options. Just know that it's a much smaller subset that have the private hot spring baths than the typical setup, which is communal hot spring baths, gender separate, fully nude. Now, if you don't want to spring for staying in an onsen hotel, there are many public baths that are around. And so these are like bathhouses that pipe the hot spring water in. They're not hotels. They're just places for people to come and take a bath. They'll often be relatively inexpensive, 300 yen, 500 yen. You may have to bring a towel. You may have to rent a towel, but that's an option to do it on the cheap. And if you want to do it even cheaper, and by that I mean free, something you will also find in a lot of hot spring towns and a lot of hot spring areas are foot baths, places that you can just soak your feet in the hot spring water. These are also typically free. You'll want to bring a towel if you're enjoying those, although some places they'll even sell you towels for a couple hundred yen. And if you've never dipped your feet in hot spring water, it is absolutely a great way to relax the feet in the middle of a long day of walking. All right, fellow explorers, the last thing to know is that we've got even more videos to help you with your Japan trip. If you're coming to Tokyo, you might want to check out my Tokyo travel guide right here, or you might want to dive into our whole Japan series playlist, over 150 videos right here from all the different regions that I talked about earlier. As usual, I won't say goodbye because I'll see you in the next video.